I think one of the ways to remain evergreen professionally is to always think that you are a young manager, you are starting out again new. Then you take on more, it creates a virtuous cycle. Semi-global business, then I made it bigger, it's become truly global business. I dealt with people from China, people from Korea, people from Brazil, people from US, Europe. There is no methodology. How do you deal with that? You deal laws of different countries. So I am a product of constraint. Why would you make yourself future-proof? Future holds promise. Where I always find it tough to talk about myself. Because when you talk about yourself, it is either self-congratulatory, or it is defamatory to someone, or it's simply kind of a self-eology. So, who I am at different stages of my life, I have been a teacher, I have been a business manager, I have been an HR leader, I have been a public service man that people call as politician. So perhaps the best way to define me is I'm a man in search of an identity, constantly discovering who I am and what I can become. I think one of the ways to remain evergreen professionally is to always think that you are a young manager, you are starting out again. I think the rate at which the world is changing, knowledge is changing, I think anybody who doesn't think that they are still young, I think they won't have the propensity to learn things that are new. So I think always I believe that one is to think of oneself as young as a startup executive, if not part of a startup organization, so that you are asking always new questions and you soaking in new things. Of course, I went through many career transitions. I started with business, went to academia, came back to business. In business from HR, I moved to running a business as a CEO, 2 businesses as a CEO. I looked after IT function, I looked after corporate affairs, and finally I landed up being in public service out of the corporate sector. Even within corporate sector, I have played roles of executive director, non-executive director, independent director, on boards of publicly listed companies, private companies, on boards of NGOs. I think each one of these would involve a transition of a certain kind. And if you're asking a message for younger people, the message always would be, life is an adventure, continue to explore various opportunities that you get. Never be afraid to fail, always keep learning, and never have regrets about the choices that you made. See, one of the biggest shifts that any HR person moving to a business has to make is that in HR, everything appears to be long-term. At least HR people believe that there is next life, like in Hindu Dharma we believe that there's a next life, and therefore perhaps sometimes we do things too much slower, And in business, everything is either here, now, tomorrow, or the latest is this quarter, and you can't go beyond that. If there is a customer or a quote is to be given, you have to give the quote today, tomorrow. You go to participate in a tender, there's a deadline, you go to give a quarterly result, the stock market is waiting. So there is always a high pressure of deadline in a business role. HR sometimes, I think one has more flexibility. You can take time to design a training program. You can take time to recruit a person, though you have pressures from line managers to do that. So first shift that you want to make mentally is the time available. The second shift you make is quantification. In business, there's loads of data. In HR, there is data, but perhaps classical HR people have not been taught how to use data. The younger, newer generation perhaps is learning more to use it. So in business, there's a lot of data. So you need to justify decisions based on data. You create hypotheses to reject based on data. Everything is data, data, data. But in HR, that you don't have, so that's the second mindset. Third is, governance in HR is more about internal governance, fairness, equity, objectivity, consistency. Governance at a business level is more driven by external stakeholder view, legal compliance requirements. So there are mindsets that one needs to shift. But having said that, if you are a well-informed, well-aware, well-clued in HR person, you are as clued into the requirements of business mindset as you are clued into the mindsets you need in HR. And the ones you are in sync with what is needed, I think the shift is not that hard. So I think, society is always judgmental. Even Indian society is more. We all have grown up on everything and what should and should not, you ought and ought not, that's a part of life. But I think we have survived in life despite judgment and, expectations of others. So I think equally in a role transition, you can survive the judgment and expectation of others. Yes, people will be skeptical, people will have questions, people will have doubt, both on your intent and your effectiveness. But as they say, nothing succeeds like success. It is a challenge that you need to prove other people wrong. But that is also that you need to be aware that when you move to a new role, what you know, what you do not know, what you need to kind of understand more. And you need to always unhesitatingly reach out to people to learn, and that's where your humility and state of not having an ego is very important. If you are the Mr. or Miss Know-all and you think, you are God's gift to mankind and nobody else has anything else to teach you, then perhaps you are running a risk of subtly inviting failure to yourself. But if you are self-aware to say that here are the things or shades of gray that I do not know and understand, and that I can go and learn from other people who know better than me, then you reach out. And one of the things to realize in life is that your self-confidence comes from knowing. Your self-confidence comes from understanding. Your self-confidence comes from being more well-informed than people that you are supposed to lead or people that you want to interact with. And if once you have that understanding, that insight and self-awareness, then you make the investment to go and learn more. And that's exactly what I did when I moved from being an academic into the business world. When I moved from ordinary role in Hindustan Lever to being the head of HR in Aditya Birla Group. I made the same transition of learning when I went to carbon black, same transition of learning into chemicals. And when I went into public service, there was a completely different world. One I had to learn, and one I had to watch other people to see how they are doing it. And you have good examples, bad examples, good models, bad models. You kind of filter those out and take the good ones that you can learn. So I think learning is important. So as Vidya Balan said, entertainment, entertainment, entertainment. If you're doing role transition, it is learning, learning and learning. But the one thing is very simple. If you don't want to fail, then don't get out of the bed. You are safest. I think if you want to do something, achieve something, make a mark, you want to change your life, your career, you want to change your experience set, there will always be failures. There is no successful individual in this world that did not have to encounter some form of disappointment, some form of failure, some form of, obstacles. Everybody has that. So I think it is a part of life and is a part of journey. So I think it comes suddenly and we say black swan events. Even if you have planned meticulously everything, still something could go wrong and you suddenly are facing either a disaster or a setback or something that is off track. And I think once you mentally factor that in, that these things could happen, you may not achieve the perfect landing. A pole vaulter when goes, you may not achieve the perfect landing. A gymnast when, takes the somersault, you may not have the perfect landing. You have built it into that, but you are still trying it. First of all, you are mentally prepared. It doesn't come as a surprise or a shock. Because the moment you accept reality as reality, to say, there is that 1%, 0.01% chance of you failing, that acceptance and that mental alertness itself is kind of great source of comfort that you can have. The second is when it happens, what do you do with it? You got to ask the question, were there things that were within my control that I could have done differently to avoid some part of it, all of it? Or there were things that were beyond my control. And I think when you bring your analytical self, then the learning starts at that point in time. Lastly, disappointment. Yes, if you did not have a perfect landing, there will always be disappointment. And you have a choice to make there. Either you give in to that disappointment and then become paralyzed and depressed and recluse and everything, or you say, hey, there is a new tomorrow, there's a new morning, the next day, and you come back. So if you ask me personally, it will be a long story to explain. Many disappointments in my life, as a person, as a professional. The moment you hold your standards high, expect to be disappointed when you fall short of that standard. So everybody goes through that. I have gone through n number of it. Picking out one example will be very hard because I'll have to spend time to explain what was the context, what was the issue, what I was dealing with. But suffice it to say that bouncing back, resilience, etc. come from your desire to do more, do better, do newer things. And once you do that, you mentally are prepared that something could go wrong. Many examples. COVID was a classic example where business was coming into pressure, retail stores were shut, whether people you have to let go, people wanted medicine, people were dying, protecting them. I think you got to get your philosophy right. And I believe while business seems to be a very hard-nosed activity, you need a philosophical tinge, an interpretation, a lens to say who truly creates value. Can your people feel always neglected, uncared for, that people have no empathy for them or there is no sensitivity? And if your people feel like that, can you still get high productivity, high engagement, high level of innovation, a great customer service? Can you expect all of that? The moment this philosophical lens, you can get it right to say, it is like in George Bush and Bill Clinton campaign, it was said the economy is stupid. If you can tell your chief executive or anybody it's the people stupid, then you get it right. That people bring you productivity and everything else, and therefore you need to bring sensitivity about everything that you do with regard to the people lens. Of course, there will be limitations. That no company has endless resource to deliver to people whatever they expect. As Mahatma Gandhi said, the world has enough for everyone's need, but not enough for everyone's greed. Even we as human beings, as employees, can be very greedy. I want this, I want that, I want, as you know, the latest iPhone when it comes, every employee's phone kind of doesn't function. But can you afford to do that? So you need to draw the Lakshman Rekha to say, my people's sensitivity also must have limitations that are real and practical. But drawing the line doesn't mean that you cannot begin with a fundamental sense of people's sensitivity. The purpose of human institutions, even business is a human institution, is well-being of people, be they your clients, your community, other stakeholders, or your employees. And therefore, if you put that at the heart of your institution or enterprise, I think the leadership has got the fundamentals right. I think if you are fortunate enough to have an extraordinary lot of people, life is always easy. But the reality is you got to work with ordinary people to deliver extraordinary results. That's what life is. And real leadership is, can you get extraordinary outcome and impact from very ordinary people? And that happens when you trust your people. You connect with them well. You're able to handhold them. They're able to have confidence in you. When you are a teacher manager, when you appreciate enough, but also give hard feedback when necessary. And I think this is all about, to me, is all about authenticity. If people believe you are an authentic human being, you are an authentic manager, you are an authentic leader, and you are genuinely, truly interested in doing the well-being of the organization while also upholding the well-being of the people, then they come together. Now, delegation is a way of extending your trust. If you pass on a critical job where your reputation matters to somebody, then you are extending trust and confidence, and you're building that individual. People respond to leaders who build individuals. build teams. You may sometimes get disproportionately rewarded because of work of other people. That may happen in real life. But at the same time, do you remember enough to give your people the credit, to thank them for what they have done? I think when you do all of that, when you build that emotional equity with your people, they give their best. And there's no one cookie cutter formula of how do you build emotional equity. You need to know your people well, you need to understand. I'll give an example. I one day walked into my office and somebody used to sit outside my cabin. I said, hi, I walked into the office and I just went in on intercom dial. I said, can you come in? The person came into my office. I said, is everything okay? The person broke down, was going through something. I just walked past, but my antenna told me something, not everything is right. When you reach that level of knowing your people, where one glance you know that person is troubled or joyful or excited about an idea or itching to go and do something, if you can get that and have that kind of rapport, then you know your people, then you can, trust them with empowerment, new assignments, new role, and whatever you can do. I think when you talk about young people saying, well, it's a two-way street. To be given empowerment and delegation, you need to be worthy of that. And for being worthy of that, you must repeatedly prove yourself that you are someone who can take initiative, can take feedback, can bounce back from failure quickly, that you are somebody that who is a keen observer and can absorb information from many sources, etc., then I think your manager can trust you to delegate you more. So it's a two-way street. I need to fundamentally bring trust to the play, and the other party must also prove that I'm worthy of trust. See, we as human beings are programmed to remain in our comfort zone. But if you again talk in philosophy terms, when you define that this is my comfort zone, how do you know this is your comfort zone unless you go out of it? And when you go out of it, how do you know this is the limit of your comfort zone? You are able to go back and forth. Point is that we always have a set pattern of what is desirable in life and people give us. Sometimes parents, sometimes friends, peer pressures grow. Well, I have to go abroad to study. It's a pattern that is growing in India. I have to have an English medium education to grow in my life. I studied all my life in Odia language, which is my mother tongue. And so there are always emerging patterns and we are comfortable with something. But I think the real stretch of a human being's capability comes when you can move out of what you have done always and to move away to do something very different, Now, I always say that those of us who, while wearing trousers, put our left leg first, you try to put your right leg first, one day you'll realize what comfort zone is and how, doing something different is. Because when you are in the unfamiliar land, you try to bring all your experiences together, find a way out, like a treasure hunt, So I think in a treasure hunt, you go on exploration. So I believe in a career also, you go out of your comfort zone where new stakeholders, new skills, new challenges, new problems are thrown at you. Then you get tested, and when you get tested, if the outcome is positive, you feel more inspired, you feel more confident about yourself, then you take on more. It creates a virtuous cycle. You go to unfamiliar territory, you do well, you feel more confident, you go into more unfamiliar territory, then you go on that. So I think, every time when I stepped into, like for example, I was asked to lead the National HRD network as the president when I was of, 35 years of age. Few senior professionals and member of the community. I'm the president of the professional body. Now, it's an influencing role where nobody needs to kind of listen to you just because you are president. Same thing happened. I was head of human resources at the age of 30. Now, how do you influence people who are sometimes 40 years older than you, in senior business roles? I confronted that. When from HR I went to Carbon Black, which was a semi-global business, then I made it bigger, it's become truly global business. dealt with people from China, people from Korea, people from Brazil, people from US, Europe. There is no methodology. How do you deal with that? You deal laws of different countries. So I think getting out of your comfort zone can be an adventure sport, I would call it. You go and enjoy the thrill, the alternate view. But I think it is always rewarding, not just in terms of career, finance, but in terms of sheer human joy that you dealt with something very different. See, nobody has seen as much change perhaps I saw in my life. And I think every generation believes that. I went from no telephone to landline dialing phone, to push button phone, to voice activated phone, to satellite phone, all generations. And I think it is not about the current generation or current times where the world is changing. I'm pretty sure in mid 14th, 15th century when industrial revolution happened, printing press came, steam engine came, people said the same thing. Early 20th century when motor cars came, perhaps people said the same thing. I think every generation, as part of human evolution, there has been change. Sometimes people have felt threatened. When fire was discovered in primitive age, perhaps people felt threatened about fire. But I think it is again a lens that you got to take that yes, change will create discomfort, but it would also create new opportunity. There was a lot of fear about computerization in early 2000 in India. Well, look at today, it has generated so much of jobs, made life easier. So I think in the current phase of AI or quantum computing and all of that we are talking about, I think are going to similarly create huge opportunities. Yes, in the medium term, short term, we may have to make adjustments, adaptations. Generative AI has created so many opportunities. We talked about it earlier in a private conversation off camera. But yes, do we have a choice but not to embrace technology? I think it is all pervading, touching even the best or, unknown areas of human life, and is going to keep on doing that more and more. So I believe is that we must look back on history to say that every generation of technological transformation, other transformation has created better human opportunity, and therefore we should be inspired by looking back on time and history rather than look into the future with fear and trepidation. Well, I think I still have a long bucket list of what I need to learn. I don't know swimming. That's one of my bucket lists. I want to learn swimming, and I will do that hopefully sometime this year. So I think learning is, if you look at learning as instrumental, that I must learn to do this or get this, I think you don't get that drive to learn. But if you tell yourself that there is so much to know and learn in the world and I know so little, and I just want to expand that for myself, then I think you are driven by an inner urge to learn more things and new things. You can learn from anywhere and anybody, So if I look at four of you, I can learn something from you if I watch it carefully, that there's something to learn from this individual. And I think if we can move away from that instrumentality of learning to say, I will learn only to expand my career or to earn more or, whatever, I think that'll be a very narrow lens through which we will look at learning. The moment you say that learning is a part of fulfilling my life and expanding my life and my horizon and, then I think one would feel inspired. I think when the learner is ready, the learning or the teacher present themselves, I think conversations from which you can learn something. Somebody says, hey, have you heard of this? Nowadays there are hundreds of apps and hundreds of technological solutions. If you have human conversation and somebody says, have you seen this? No. Okay, show me that, how to do it? Okay, you can do it. Just now, a few minutes ago, we were talking about that on generative AI, ChatGPT, there's a research function, you mentioned to me. Now, I presume before we end this interview, you will teach me how to use the research function. I'll be well informed about that. And I may not use the research function, but if you can just simply bring your curiosity to the fore. Now, here's something I heard interesting. Can I learn? I think that's how you learn. Learning must come effortlessly. It must not look like a pain or a burden or a drudgery that you have to kind of struggle to learn. So if you can make it a natural effort, like you sleep, eat, you have a shower, you chat with people, you make integral part of your being, I think you are there. Well, I think the moment you say that HR is an integral part of this organization, which is a business organization, and you are there to look after people so that they further the business, I think the equation becomes simple. You hire somebody, the guy performs very well, people say he's a great guy, he's doing a great job, you have contributed to the business. You say that there's a new technology coming, we offered training program and courses and learning opportunity on time, and therefore we were not outdated, we could compete effectively in the market. I think you've done a great job. There's a health pandemic came, you quickly turned around the organization to support your people so that your customer service did not get disrupted because of the policies you provided to support your people. You made an impact on the business. I believe there are 100 different ways, small and large, that you are impacting business every day, and you can. Question is, you need to understand the levers and the drivers of the business very clearly and carefully, and then align many things you are doing so that the business is impacted. I do not belong to that school that believes that everything that you do in HR must be only for business. I belong to that school. I believe that primarily you got to do it for people and they will in turn do it for the business. There are two different schools. There's a fad today that everybody says everything HR does only for the business. If it is not for the business, you don't do it. Then you find hundreds of thousands of people getting downsized. Downsize is an easy option to protect your business, but then you break trust. So the question is, what do you value therefore? That do you think the long-term interest of your customers and organization is served by preserving the trust of your people, or the short-term objective is achieved by breaking the trust of your people? These are philosophical choices people have to make. But having said that, I always have believed that HR is a very, very core function to the business. It is the source, it is not just resource as we talk about it. And therefore, everything that you can do for well-being of people, they will in turn contribute to the business. But one is to keep on asking this question, that do I see evidence that what I'm doing for people or in the people area, is it going to positively impact the business and its outcome? If you remember Mahabharata story, that Ekalabhya made a murti of Dronacharya, and that murti became the mentor and the coach. You can always have a human being as the mentor and the coach, but the image of that in your mind itself is a process of mentoring. So you can have a junior manager, you are a young person, your CEO is very senior. You don't have to every day interact with the CEO to learn. But if you can just watch and observe also, you can learn. So I think there can two aspects to mentoring coaching, which is active engagement and other is passively soaking up all that is going around you and people around you. I think people have always value to add. I had a senior CFO that helped me within the group to learn about accounts, finance, which I didn't know. In every field actually, one doesn't know many things. You go to learn, there's a certain meeting that you go to the first time. Have you studied the people? There are many times when my secretary's brief always was that before I'm meeting someone first time, I need to have LinkedIn profile or whatever search on internet to know about the individual before I meet. Now, this whole preparedness, the concept of preparedness, is very important to success. Otherwise, athletes, sports persons, all the time you seeing them practicing, preparing before a match, and even when there is no match. Similarly, I always believe that trying to prepare yourself in some manner is critical. Coaches and mentors can be of great help if you can learn from their experiences. There can never be perfect parallel between one person's experience with another, but there will be fundamental levels of principle that would equally be applicable and relevant, or at least your repertoire of choices would increase because you can plug into many different kinds of experiences to learn from. How do you identify? You can always talk to people to identify. You can look at some experts in a certain area. If you are looking at something too specialized, for example, you can look at people who have retired. You can look at professors. Anybody from your parents to your professors to your friends to your own children can be your coaches and your, in contemporary times, young children they have more understanding about technology than you have. They can be reverse mentors of you. They can teach you a few things. Internet trading, for example, share trading. I would never know how the hell to trade shares on any platform. But these young people, I see they do that. So if you want to learn something new on technology, you can reverse mentoring by young people. But it's the attitude of trying to prepare yourself to learn is what is important. Well, my whole life story has been one of constraints. My father was posted at a place in Odisha where there were no schools, there were no public transport, there were no private transport. Me and my sister had an old teacher who used to come home and we learned from him. I never went to any school until the class 5. I never had opportunity to converse with anyone in English or had no English education, but yet got opportunity to teach in England when I was doing my second PhD. So I am a product of constraints. So the point is, do you get overwhelmed with constraints or you say, all right, I still have a choice. I'll find my way to move forward. I think whenever there is a problem that is there that needs to be solved, the reward can be far bigger if you can solve the problem. I think you need to recognize the constraint but not treat it as a limitation on your ability to make a difference. So I think the end of, let's say, 2020 match in last 5 overs, if you've got a lot of batsmen gone, etc., and you are there with 1 or 2 left, you have a choice to make. The constraint is you have still a large number of runs to score. Either you get paralyzed, you say, okay, I'll draw on all my experience and give my best, and then people hit out and make you win the match, And I think it's that spirit that matters, Constraints will always be there in life. Question is, you got to find innovation, ways around the constraint. You got to, even within the constraint, ask that, okay, if this is the constraint, could it create a bigger opportunity for me as well, Look at Israel, look at Singapore, look at Dubai. These are countries at many points, perhaps they have many things that they do not have. Whereas in India, we would have provinces where we have many things, but we have not converted it. So I don't think constraint matters. And that's when there is constraint, that is the need for true leadership. When there is constraint, there's a need for true innovation. And I think you can always bring a combination of leadership and innovation to get around constraints. So, greatest good of the greatest number is a utilitarian philosophy. Bentham and John Stuart Mill and all talked about utilitarianism as the greatest good of greatest number in some ways. But what is productivity? Productivity is that using limited amount of resource can you make a much bigger impact. So that's what I meant by saying that we will always be resource constrained. And we need to all the time find productive ways of, can I use the resource in a manner that I can create multiple values for as many people as possible, for as long as possible. And if that mindset you can bring, then India is a resource constrained country. World is a resource constrained place, as you find with climate and environment and everything. So therefore, we need to always think in terms of productivity to say that can I create the largest impact with as minimum resources I can use. First of all, anybody who chases the next promotion title, I have nothing against them. It's a choice you have to make. But you got to ask the true essence of leadership. You have resources and people in your care with the trust and belief that you can use those resources to do good for other people. And when you are given valuable, scarce resources with the belief that these are meant to do good for other people, then it becomes a responsibility on you. It is not fulfilling or filling up a position in a box. Those leaders who have used resources to make a difference for people, they have always earned respect, they have always been admired, they have always been supported by people around. And those who used leadership as a box, as power for themselves, to serve their narrow personal interest, they in course of time have been rejected both by people and history. So every leadership needs to be taken as a responsibility. If it is an elected position in a parliament or an assembly, if it is an appointment as a managing director or a CEO, or even a manager or a general manager, if it is even as a security watchman at an airport or a hotel or a hospital, responsibility comes with a certain position. Leadership is often associated with larger and higher responsibility. And leadership is always about the impact you create for other people. And if you miss an opportunity to create a positive impact, I think one failed in one's responsibility. So leadership's other aspect is responsibility. And I think that if we keep in mind, we remain more conscientious about who we are and what we need to do. So first of all, I kind of do not agree with this concept of future proofing. I always believe that you create weatherproof houses. You prevent, by proofing something, you prevent something from attack and entering. Why would you make yourself future proof? Future holds promise. You should embrace the future. Why make yourself future proof? So, I have a very big difference with this concept of future proofing. But having said that, learning skills, as we talked about, is what creates capacity and capability in people. And number two, as the context changes, the skills required are changing. What skills are required will keep on changing from profession to profession, country to country, location to location. However, there will be some generic skills that will keep on changing and we would require more and more. For example, a skill I call as zooming out and zooming in is a skill. Can you go and look at the big picture and come down and go into the depth and details of it? Now, this is a skill. Not everybody would have that. Similarly, for example, comfort with technology. Is it a skill or it's an attitude? I do not know. But the more you learn newer skills linked to technology, whether it's an Excel or PowerPoint or whether it is about generative AI or whatever that is, if we keep on learning more and more skills with the new technology, I think we will increase our comfort with technology. Similarly, for example, a skill called multi-generational working. You work today at different levels with people of different generation, all of whom would have different temperament, attitude, etc. How do you relate to all of them? That's a different kind of a skill. It's a soft skill, you may say, but it is a skill nonetheless. Similarly, I think how to use data, how to capture, store, retrieve, and use data. That's a skill. So I think all of this has become more and more relevant. I think these would all be very relevant for people. Language skill will become very important. Mandarin, Spanish, Japanese, people with who you want to do business, language skill is important. Cultural skills are important when you interact in a global business with people with different cultural background. Similarly, managing matrix relationships. If matrix organizations grow, how do you manage matrix relationships and work? That is going to grow. So I think there are many skills of that kind that will be required for the future. And I think given that digital learning, micro-size learning and all of that are growing, I think there's a lot of opportunity for people of today to learn, being at their workplace, being at their home, during travel. The technology enables that flexibility, that access and reach. And I would only urge younger people that, as I had said earlier, that not to use learning as an instrument to only grow career, etc., but more to use it as a fulfilling themselves as human beings. The career and growth and all will follow subtly, but I think that need not be the only purpose why we should have learning. As I told you, I'm like you do channel surfing, I do AI tool surfing now. So all of these generative AI platforms that are available, I try to experiment with all of them. Sometimes they put the same question to more than one to see who gives me the most enriched answer. I think one of the good things about emerging technology tools is that you have a choice. You don't rely on, good old days we had to rely on one Google or one Windows or one this or that, we don't have to rely on that. We have a choice and therefore I go between many.